Okay, let's see if we can do this again. Let's see if we can get some folks. All right, Islam, can you hear us? Is the question. We had some audio problems on the first try. Can you hear us? We want to make sure she can hear us. Okay, good now? All good now? Good. Thank you for coming back. We have office hours. We're having office hours. Grand Sheik and I, I have the privilege of talking to you all the time. A lot of people don't have that privilege, and I get to hear all kinds of questions, all kinds of stuff that people would like to say to you personally. And as a matter of fact, we just want you to know too that if you have questions and you put your questions, you want to type your questions here in the comments. We're going to do the best that we can to try to respond to those questions. Hopefully, let them be general questions. If you have a particular situation, a personal problem, I guess I want to say, a situation that you're dealing with, you may want to send us an email to houseofreawakeningminds@gmail.com, and we'll try to see if we can get you some assistance. But can you let your questions be more general than specific to a certain situation that you have, but it may be something that a lot of people are dealing with. And also we're going to deal with some of the things that you and I talk about that I would, because people call me all the time. Because it seems like I must be the only organization or we, House of Reawakening Minds, that answers their phone. Because when people call, people call and they go, sometimes they go, "Oh my gosh, you answered," and I want to go, "Oh my gosh, you called," So I mean, but most of the times I do answer the phone, and I do try to respond to as best I can to the situations that come up. Help the people, and then sometimes it's just about people wanting to express their gratitude. They want to express their gratitude for the videotapes and the teachings that they've been enjoying, some, for years, and some might say, I just discovered, Grand Sheik a couple of months ago, and my life has changed, and I just want to let somebody know. And so those calls, and I listen, I listen intently to all those those messages and stories.
Hopefully we've done some good. Hopefully.
Yeah. And that's why I'm grateful that you stayed over and that you agreed to do this, which is going to be sort of, let's answer some questions or some things we've had discussions.
Do this every once in a while.
Yeah.
About
right, because we know that you have you have situations sometimes that you just don't get the answer to, and while it may be an excellent class, it may not address the thing that you have in your heart that's burning. So we're going to try to do some of that. Would you also do us a favor? Would you send out, I guess that you can share this and let people know that Grand Sheik and I are on live. I know some folks, I think there's a UFC fight tonight, but I will, yeah. But the main event is not yet. They don't do the main event yet. But we hope that you can spend a little bit of time with us. One question I want to start out with was not necessarily a question. Well, then it is sort of a question. It has come up that some people have become confused about nationality and birthright when it comes to the mother's bloodline versus the father. And
well, yes.
We talked about that.
Last night
we talked about it. Yeah, so I want, if you will.
Now, there's a nature reality that has descended into the political reality, and then there's a counter to that.
Okay.
All right, so this must be understood. By nature, government and family is a matriarchy by nature. And it is reflected in most all Asiatic African cultures, period. And it has come down as a custom and tradition in Asiatic and African government and structure. However, you know, with Albion or hybrid European Occidental operations, particularly under the popes of Rome, the structure is patriarchal.
Okay.
Now, the recognition in truth of the lineage of the human family is always traced through the female, because that's established divinely and in nature. That's a fact. That's irrefutable, irregardless. So we have to look at what is done politically, distinguished from that which nature supports and is in reality. All right. So Asiatic African culture, matriarchy. European culture and those who follow Rome, patriarchy. Although, and this is a fact, the Moorish nation is a blend of matriarchy, patriarchy. Now, the ancient Moabite nation, founders of civilization, is a matriarchy. The Moorish nation is the Moabite nation descended into a patriarchal flavor. Now, that's the fact, that's the truth. Now, however, in the philosophies, the matriarchy principle is always maintained and respected in governmental structure in Moorish society, while the face of it may be appearing patriarchal. That must be understood. Whereas in European culture, it's strictly patriarchal. But that's more political than reality. That must be understood.
Okay. But when someone, for instance, and I think the place I've seen this more, I guess, in more recent times where we can see the distinction, most of the time, you must agree that we see more Moorish men with Albion women that make the amalgamated children, as opposed to Moorish women and Albion men. The exception, and more recently, would be that of Meghan Markle. While Meghan
and others,
like, no, I'm saying others, but when a person, there have been people who've come to the House of Reawakening Minds, and they're real gung ho, for their nationality and birthright, and then they are told that, oh, well, what's your mother's bloodline? So then they're told that
so they must know what that really is. Now, and the deal of it is, it shouldn't be taken personally. It should be taken factually, because when you're dealing with government, now you're dealing with politics,
right?
And so when you're dealing with government and government structure, resources, etc., you deal all over the planet with nationals who are the Aboriginal or the people of the land of that said jurisdiction, and then you have people that may be of other nation states that want to participate or be a part of that. Right. That is naturalization. That is the standard. It's very simple. It's not complex.
But here's the point I wanted to make. So if a person's mother happens to be Albion, then they can still participate.
Exactly.
They have to,
that's what the Naturalization Act is for.
Naturalize instead of nationalize.
Yes, that's what it's for. Now, so people who don't understand this, now, and this is again, when you're dealing with fundamental rule of law, you don't put your personalities in it. You don't put your personal in it. And I think a lot of times when people are looking at these things, they have a tendency to put their personal in it as opposed to the reality. No, so let's keep this simple. Many of the Moorish Americans in North America who are nationalizing now, if they went to the home states of their mates, i.e. England, Ireland, Germany, Deutschland, etc., Switzerland, they wanted to be a citizen or member of that society, they would be naturalized. And conditions would be presented to them where they would have to take tests, they would have to make affirm or swear allegiance, and it must be on paper. And that's the rule all around the world. What makes them offended that that's the rule here?
Well,
No, I'm just saying there should be no offense. There should be understanding what government is. It's sort of like it is government, and I think a lot of people need to really understand government structure because it's based on matriarchy. Same thing as a family, meaning that, like, say for instance, your neighbor's child likes to stay over at your house often, and you want to adopt that child, right? Mm. That child would be naturalized into your family. However, by inheritance, that child's rights to inheritance does not supersede your organic children.
Okay.
That's the same thing as nationalization and naturalization. If you understand that rule, apply it in government, there's no confusion whatsoever. It's a principle of hereditament, a principle of descendancy. And that's its nationality, and naturalization is based on those fundamental principles. Who's your mother? In other words, whoever your nation state is, you understand that's your mother. Mm-hmm. So whoever your mother is your genealogy. Now you can have blended or hybrid genealogy, but still the tracing is coming through your mother.
Right.
The inheritance comes through your mother. It doesn't deny you privileges that are granted in a political platform. But the deal of it is that the naturalized being person, their rights, they cannot have rights that supersede the Aboriginal. Mm-hmm. Or meaning that you have a son and a daughter that came from your womb. An adopted child can't supersede them in an argument for inheritance of your properties. That the same thing goes in nationalization versus naturalization.
Now, I understand that, but I think this is the point I think I wanted to make. Often I've heard it explained in such a way that if your mother is not a Moor, then you can't be a Moor. They don't explain the naturalization process. And you told me.
Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
Like, say for instance,
that piece is left out.
Yeah. If your mother is German, as an example, right? Mm-hmm. And she mates with a Nigerian, right? Then that child's condition. This is why you see even in laws around the world, the condition of the child is condition of the mother. That's why the mother's always because it's based on nature. I think a lot of times people confuse things that are done by legislation from things which are based in nature. Now you have what is called common law in its nature, that's more aligned with natural law. And then you have legislated law or ens legis operations, which can be dismissed, modified, or thrown out. Mm-hmm. Divine law stands.
Okay.
In structured government, like say, for instance, when it's called the common law, even when you're dealing with the issues of the straw man and things like that, what you call corporate constructs, it is the common law that trumps the Roman law and the canon law upon which the straw constructs are built, because it's based on the ancient traditions and customs of your mothers and fathers from time immemorial. So those are what you call unalienable rights or birthrights. They are not legislated. They are in the nature of the being. Just like, in other words, why the same way that it's not debatable that your son or your daughter coming from your womb should have first rights, or it's called firstborn rights, primogeniture rights to your estate, because in relationship to someone you may adopt.
Right.
Now, you may give them things and not treat them different. However, in law and rule of descendancy, they can't claim a right that supersedes your birth child. That's law all over the world, and it's not an offensive, and no one should take it offensive. If you and I'll repeat, if you understand that nature principle, you understand nationalization distinguished from naturalization. If a Chinese or Manchurian, say, goes to Russia, they may spend their life in Russia. Now, when you're dealing with the genetic codes, or what you call the homogenized pedigree, he's still Chinese. You know, but he can be a Russian citizen.
Right.
So a European can be a Moorish citizen under the Naturalization Act.
Now, would you say that because you told me there was a church that used to.
Sure, in the West, it's not used to be.
It still is. Tell us about that.
Now, mostly in the West, you know, and what's actually in parts of Jersey at one time too. The Europeans who followed the teachings of Noble Ali and also aligned themselves with the real history of the human family, you know, not based on the dynamic politics that we deal with under the controlled narrative thing, established a Moorish Orthodox church. And they're, you know, naturalized Moors. And of course, within their venue, they may even use what you call a nationalization process. But in true theory, they're naturalized if they're European. No different than if you went to England and you decide to stay in England and become a citizen of that political venue. People must understand the distinction between a political adoption of citizenship or family membership and the organic membership. So the organic, which means the biological relationship, is what you call pedigree and bloodline. So when they're talking pedigree and bloodline, it answers itself. It has nothing to do with your opinion. You can have an opinion one way or another, but that's a natural answer.
Yeah. Well,
I think a lot of times people who do not understand legislation or what you call civil rule that is made by men and women by choice of decision or how they want to run an order or an organization, that must be distinguished from that which nature herself does not lie. And so your biological children are your nativity. So the biological child is national in all principles of inheritance. And then the non-biological child is what you call citizen under the Naturalization Act.
So that can be two, and then that can fall under one of two categories. That can be either the one who has, whose mother may not be Moorish, but maybe another parent is, or the individual who just says, I would like to adhere to and give my allegiance to the Moorish nation and become
That's why
Moorish.
They have pledges of allegiance to political
and to
systems.
become naturalized.
That's what naturalized are. Even when you see people go into different nation states and they have what you call green cards. Those are naturalization instruments.
Right.
You know, they are conditional. If such persons violate the constitutional principles of that said political body or your family, you tell them to go home.
Right.
If you get the point. Now, the best way to understand any of this is think of ordinary family and the fundamental rules that run a family and the nature of family on the planet. Apply the same principle to nation states on a larger scale, and it gets political, and so you have what you call legislative structure to protect the larger family.
Mm.
Now, in its nature, it's harmonic first with the pedigree and bloodline, but then there's another side that deals with the ens legis, or what you call the legislated acceptance, and that would be Naturalization Act. And so, and the best thing to do really is really even go to the law book. You got your Black's Law here?
Let me see. Black's Law.
Yeah, let's go.
Last time I did this, I knocked book stamps.
Oh, you did?
And I see your questions here. Let me see. We're going to let him finish with this point, and then I'm going to scroll back up and look at some of your questions and see if we can get some of your questions answered. So don't think that you're being ignored. And let me see if I can adjust this camera just a little bit so I get a little bit more you in there. There we go. There you go. A little less of me, a little more you. So, like I said, thank you so much for taking time out of your really, really busy schedule to be here with us, especially since you didn't know we were going to come on. We're going to go. Oh, okay. While you're doing that, here's a good question. Manly P. Hall, what is meant from your perspective? They want to know when a European says they're blue blood.
Well, the reason why Europeans are all usually referred to as blue bloods is because the thin skin of the Albion hybrid is very thin and has limited melanin by the nature of the hybriding. And so the blood often with Europeans can be looked at two ways. According to the paleness of the skin, the blood under the skin looks blue or dark purple, and then sometimes red, which is why sometimes Europeans refer to themselves as redneck, and then also blue blood. And very often in the early Germanic tribes, because keep in mind, all Occidentals are essentially Germanic. Mm-hmm. And they would sometimes paint their faces blue in relationship to the blood that look like blue. When you see, if you look a lot of
like even here, I can see like,
yes, it'll look blue, not red.
Blue. Yeah,
it'll look blue, not red. And even so, when the blood is not exposed to air, it actually, when it's exposed to air, it turns more reddish. But actually, when you're looking at the veins through the European skin, very often it looks blue. And so that is more or less a colloquial term that Europeans evolved with, referring to themselves as blue blood.
But all blood is the same color.
Yes,
it doesn't
like
matter
blood.
who
Yes.
you are. So the United States is not a nation. So wait a minute, what are they asking? So the United States is not a nation if they can only naturalize, not nationalize?
And this is true. And this is part of the dynamics of the problems that they're having right now. Now that people are, particularly when you have so many Moorish Americans that are making public proclamation of their nationality, because the Europeans, because we're under colonial operations, and the Europeans have used what they would refer to as the India Pacific Company code system, or color code system, to create the caste. And so for particularly after the Kansas-Nebraska Act with the Whiggamore Party, when the Europeans started calling themselves white people, from a law perspective and from a status perspective, it is actually a noble title. White people or white person, free white person is a title that essentially applies to the sovereign rulers of the land, i.e. people of the land. When the Whiggamore Party was suggested under Horace Greeley, for the Europeans to start calling themselves white people, it became to their social engineering advantage to promote the code system of green people, purple people, orange people, brown people, black people, white people, in order for people to forget that they're Europeans, because they were also carrying out their secret Treaty of Verona agenda. And of course, the Spanish Inquisition against the Moors never really ended. And so most of that dynamics of that social engineering is hidden under the veil of what they're calling racism and prejudice and white supremacy, which actually is the Roman Inquisition colonial hegemony project or program under the Unum Sanctum policy and the doctrine of discovery, which is actually what's in operation. And for the people of the land not to be cognate, or what you would say clear on what they're really dealing with, the misdirected and diversionary race argument is presented artfully to them to keep them busy and forgetting that the Europeans are alien to us.
Yeah, you're not saying like alien from another planet.
They're alien to us. No different than the Europeans call other people from other nation states
like they'll
aliens.
say illegal aliens.
Yes.
Yeah, that okay.
Now, so aliens come under naturalization when they come through the ports, the proper process.
All right.
Now, so when they don't come through the proper process of naturalization, they're alien to that government. You see? Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that the Europeans have been practicing here in North America, which is fraudulent, is that they themselves are supposed to be under the Naturalization Act. But because they, under color of law and color authority, are what you call an interregnum, it's an interregnum government. So they're an interregnum, it's actually NUM. They're pretending to be the sovereign people of the land, which is why they refer to themselves as Americans when they're not. This is also why they also refer falsely to their private corporate operations that really belong to England and the Pope of Rome as America, for people who don't know better, because a lot of people can't read and a lot of people don't know basic third grade geography. So they think that America's a country because they've been socialized to that. Although you could take a child from almost any other nation state that has even a piece of an education, knows that America's a continent. Do you understand?
Right.
But what it does, from a sociological narrative control, it keeps the people uncognate or off the subject matter that the Europeans are alien. You see?
Mm-hmm.
And that way they, as an example, by right law, Europeans can't own land at North America. This is another reason why they keep claiming to be American. And then by law, they can't own land. And so they use the unum sanctum policy and the doctrine of discovery to artificially and under color of law claim lands under eminent domain of the Aboriginal peoples. This is why in 1913, the members of the Circle Church of the Chancery, who are the bankers and the lawyers, and Woodrow Wilson administration converted all allodial titles and Aboriginal titles, which supersede any other claim, into mortgages and deeds. And through the mortgage and deed systems, they have been gentrifying the people and stealing their land under the doctrine of discovery. And so when you see them running us out of Lower Egypt, which we call, Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia area, they call it the Trail of Tears, North Carolina, etc., stealing our land, that's done under the doctrine of discovery. When you start looking at the records, whereas the Aboriginals would contest the robbery of their land, the courts would even supersede them under the doctrine of discovery. All of it is in violation of law. Keep that in mind. So this issue of calling themselves Americans and then calling their political platform, which is a private corporation, which was registered in France in 1754 by Benjamin Franklin, which was dealing with the service contracts, or what is called the enumerated powers contracts for the Maghreb, or North America, as it was being transferred into the hands of the Germanic tribes. And then you come up to the secret treaty, the Treaty of Peace and Friendship between the Moroccan Empire and Great Britain via the United States colony corporate operations. And because they've been converting the rights of the people into their private United States corporation, this is why it is so important from a political perspective, not from a perspective of truth, from a political perspective, for them to promote the fiction that America's a country, to promote the fiction that they, the European colonists and their descendants, are Americans, and to promote people as brown, green, yellow, white, and black in order for people not to recognize that these people are aliens. And so they question everybody else's nationality, and they do it vehemently and constantly to divert people from questioning their nationality.
Speaking of nationality, and we've had this conversation before, but when someone comes here from another country and so-called allegedly allegedly commits a crime, they will
deport them. That's the standard.
No, they will arrest them, incarcerate them, and then say following their their release, they are now going to be deported.
Yes.
If we come from somewhere else other than this continent, why are we not deported after, if we ever get out of
they can't.
incarceration?
Logically, they can't, because we're the nationals. and they have no authority. They have no political capacity to do this. This is why the activities of Senator Bilbo failed when they was doing this thing with Liberia. They tried to pull it before. As a matter of fact, Liberia, and in 93, 94, 95, I used to talk to the ambassador. He used to call me on a regular basis. This was during the time when Michael Jackson used to try to get me to come out there when he was having problems with that boy. Mukesh, as a matter of fact, his name is Mukesh, and I know he doesn't mind because he's in California now. Anyway, he's the brother of the ambassador of Liberia. Now, remember Monroe, the president of the United States Service Corporation, they were trying to promote the same paradigm that these people are suffering today with a lack of understanding. And so this is where what is called Liberia on the east side of Mexum, that's where that has its origin. That's no ancient nation, no ancient African nation. This is where they took Moors from North America and were trying to colonize them on that side to try to create a port by which they could start stealing our land and getting our people off. Of course, it did not work. And so even to this day, and I've talked to some Nigerians, since Mukesh, etc. And some of our conversations were along the line, and I'm telling you, that's why some of them have been having problems, because this is their home. It doesn't mean that we're not related. This is their home. The same way that French Muslim school Malcolm, don't come up with that white and black language. That's slave language. You left home. And this is the same thing. Our people have been disconnected mentally from the land. And so, but in law and in fact and in reality, they can't deport the nationals. They themselves are aliens, and they are a private corporation. And any act in the sense of naturalization is actually an act of what you call arbitrary, essentially a war crime, and actually a call of authority, which is why it's never really done. Although they have set up what you would call puppets around the world in other nation states, so to speak, they still cannot supersede that fundamental principle. And so what they have done under their doctrine of discovery is pack the private POW camps of the Jesuits and the Illuminati, dark side Illuminati, which are actually POW camps, which they're calling state prisons with our people. And that's the real origin of why the numbers of our people are so high, because they can't deport them. They can't, and that's fact.
Yeah, and when you look at now what's happening, and I want to get to some of these questions because there are a bunch of good questions coming up. But before we get there, the fact that after so many, and so many people were loving on Clinton back in the day when he was the president. He's the first black. They were saying things like that. He's the first black president.
And in fact, that really wasn't a false statement. That was a true statement.
Okay.
But we can go into that later.
But the point I wanted to make is that under his administration, it's more of us went to prison.
More Aboriginal families were broken up.
The 3 strikes.
More of our men have packed the prisons.
Right.
More of our women have packed the prisons in the Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton administration than in the entire history of all the presidents at North America.
Again, you touched on this last night, and I'm so glad that you started bringing up the fact that we have this really unnatural allegiance to either party,
and that unnatural allegiance is even one of the arguments that the Ku Klux Klan had about our people in the first place in the political platform of the United States Service Corporation, which was a legitimate argument.
Okay. Well,
it is. In other words, like, you can't be a member of the nation state that conquered you.
Right.
You can be their subject. You can't be their member.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, this has much to do with the 14th. Now, on another level, has much to do with the ens legis corporate person constructed in 1868 under the, Negro Acts and stuff like that, under the Ku Klux Klan, when they closed the Freedmen's Bureau. And of course, because many of our people who are conversos, wanting to be Constantinians, in the name of Christianity, they wanted desperately to be a member of the Europeans' order. Now, remember, the treaty was already there, but they want to be Negro, blacks, and coloreds, which is brands of the Europeans, their property. So that's what the 14th Amendment is for.
Were they aware of the treaty and wanted to be something else,
Some
or were they cut off from the reality that there was a treaty? Because I didn't know there was a treaty until I met you.
Let's put things in timeline.
Okay.
Isn't it true that cases like the Dred Scott case were common fare?
No,
I'm just saying. All right, let's back up. Let's back up.
Not to me.
No, let's back up.
Okay.
Let's put it in timeline.
All right. At the time, right.
The Dred Scott case of 1857 is known by scholars around the world, not just here, and is a study case for scholars all around the world as being the most important slave case ever to come before the Supreme Courts of the United States. So we're not talking about some haphazard, this case, that case. That's measured as the most important case dealing with citizenship, the very nature of what we're talking about.
Okay.
Right? And of course, those of you who are aware of the Dred Scott case, that case is used as a measure of citizenship, not just here, but around in other nation states. They've used that as a reference point too. And the issue is status, not complexion, not color, status. People keep talking racism, it's status. Are we clear? He's not European. He can't be part of a European private corporation that conquered Moors. Duh. Like dumb. It had nothing to do with the Sanford family taking them into the Missouri territory. However, people like to argue color, race, because that's their training. Wasn't the issue of the case. The case was plaintiff in error. Now, again, we put it in time context. The William Dungy case that Abraham Lincoln did in 1853, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in that area. It's common knowledge that if you called our people black, you had to fight because it was always a setup under the unum sanctum policy to set up Moors to steal their estate. And so it's a slander and it's pejorative. And so the William Dungy case, although he was Portuguese, the case was won on the basis that he's Moor. So this is common knowledge, even up to present. It's just suppressed. It's common knowledge in Masonry. First lesson they get in all your secret societies is root to Moabitus. That's not a secret. The deal of it is the masses have been groomed into the black codes, and they're trying to measure past history with the socialization that is contemporary. Meaning their linguistics are contaminated. It's sort of like someone bringing up or putting on a question here, what do you think about George Washington and Lafayette? Did Lafayette have a Galaxy 10 and George Washington have an iPhone, or was it reversed? And then, so the question itself is already corrupted because it's out of sequence. It's out of timeline. And this is why it's important for people to know fundamental logistics and etymology when they're doing research, because they have a tendency to try to take contemporary social engineering terms and phrases and place them in a period of time when they did not exist. Not unlike when you see a lot of our people talk about these problems that we have today, these social problems that we refer to the Europeans as white people. When if you go, say beyond 1854 or in when the Knights of Columbus Ku Klux Klan oath was taking place in Philadelphia, and actually maybe what you say casually a decade or more before then, the Europeans were not called white people.
Right. You have their own people saying, we weren't this until,
It's but look at this. It ain't them. It's our people that keeps trying to our so-called scholars that keep on trying to take retroactive social engineering that they know is social engineering and try to legitimize it because they have written a lot of books claiming green people, purple people, don't matter what color you are, and white people, and they put them in timelines when those social engineering paradigms did not exist, and it's absolutely provable. And rather than admit that they're wrong and stop perpetrating false information to help denationalize their own people for a few pieces of coins, you know, because the corporations put funds aside for their little Negro organizations. And so for them to be funded, they got to go along with this black and Negro marching paradigm, rather than tell the truth of the history. Even with the letter J and Jesus thing, the whole paradigm. But the point of it is the fact that our people are Moors is common knowledge to all scholars around the world. It is a problem in North America because Morocco's under occupation. And that knowledge is masonically suppressed. None of this is unknown. What it is, you have people who know this, who are what you could say compromised, and will not get black funding if they talk if they don't say that the brands are African identities. So they will teach the children that Black History Month is African. Black means African. They know damn well it doesn't. You know, I'm just telling you. And so the deal of it is this social engineering creates paradigms of misinformation to the level that when our people really try to solve problems, they're actually incompetent. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, when the responses that they expect they don't get, because they think they know what's up, they often take offense. When they shouldn't be offended, they need to be re-educated. You know, and so
I don't mean it. The interesting thing about these new phones, you can turn your phone off and it still rings. Mm-hmm. I turned it off, as in turned it off.
Like off.
Like off. But now it still rings.
You turned it off. That don't mean they turned it off.
Yeah, it means that it was, there's still tap again. I did this, and then but you heard it ring, right?
Yeah, that don't mean
I'm sorry, y'all. Yeah, you know, we know that they're always listening, but so but you know, here's another thing I want to say to you. You know, one would think, or some, you know, would say, well, you know, if we were already here, and I'm not questioning that, but if we were already here, how did we go from being the indigenous Aboriginal peoples of the land to being what the so-called?
We didn't really go
no, here we
anywhere.
go. Well, but we didn't go anywhere. But the so-called slave, that period of enslavement, you got people who will literally say, well, my great-great-great-grandmama was a slave. Like, how did we go from being indigenous Aboriginal to having people come over here? Were we more sharecropping our own? What happened to take us from where we were owning, you know, how did we get in
back to doctrine of discovery?
But I want to help me and maybe some others of how do we go from being here and all that to being under any level of
social engineering, disconnect. In other words,
so how did they? What process did they use to socially?
It's called psychological disassociation.
Okay.
And so you disconnect the people from the land and from inherited.
Was that the moving us to Trail of Tears, that kind of thing?
Which they use to this very day, even in the military. Yes. From the southeast, they moved them northwest. From the northeast, they moved them to the southwest. Same patterns used in the military today to disorient the people, and also so if they ran away, they would be in an unfamiliar surroundings, etc., even though on their own land. This is why it's also called the Trail of Tears, you know, or even with what you would call the trade triangle up here in the north, you know, between Boston, you know, Philadelphia area, Chicago, you know, the old.
You're familiar with where you are, but when they put you on the whole other side of now you got to reacclimate yourself, figure out how you're going to live, and then now you become
because
dependent
you have no reference points, and so your chances of going any long distance and surviving without capture would be slim.
Okay.
You know, and not that you wouldn't know that you're on your land, but it's no different than taking someone from Sichuan in China to say near Taiwan, which was also part of China.
Oh, really?
Okay. Oh, yeah, really. I mean, the political separation is contemporary. You know, just like North and South Korea is a contemporary paradigm.
Okay, yeah, because it's just Korea or whatever
exactly.
Or whatever it was
All
before
of those were acts committed by Europeans who invade and have been attacking Asiatics around the world.
Well, listen, back to this original question somebody asked. Somebody says here that blue blood also, and we were just talking about it, blue blood also means noble, because you said something else.
They would use that as their noble, as a symbolic of their nobles, you know. But in the Asiatic world, Arab would reference noble. Arab is not a people. It's not a bloodline. It's not a nation. It is it's Persic in its origin, or more related to, you know, Urdu in that area of linguistics, and it actually means noble, and it was generally applied to people of Asiatic African descent. Even when you start looking at, like, say, if you look at, even when they look at, like if any of you have any of your great-great-grandmothers or grandfathers' pictures, where they have notations written in them, they refer to the chieftains and the shakuns here as noblewomen and noblemen. You know, it's not anybody knows the culture knows that. But what I think, because the people have been socialized into thinking that Arab is an identity of Asiatic African people in certain areas of Saudi Arabia, etc., that's a bloodline. It's not a bloodline. It means noble, and it applied to Asiatics and Africans, Moors in general.
I'm just going to let them know what we're talking about. Somebody commented that blue bloods means noble, but earlier Grand Sheik
it's
and
an
I,
application,
no, but earlier before we came live, Grand Sheik and I were talking about, he was explaining to me the fact that the term Arab meant noble, means
it's not a bloodline.
It's not a bloodline, and it means noble. And the other thing that we were having a discussion about, and this thing is not letting me go back. I was trying to go back to some of the questions, but the other thing that we were having a discussion about that we were clarifying is we were watching something on YouTube, and there's been, if you've been watching any of the CNNs or Foxes or anything, there's a lot of talk of anger on both sides of the aisle of this freshman, is she a congresswoman who's is she Palestinian or
yes,
whatever? They're saying that she's anti-Semitic, and we were explaining to me about what
it's a double lie. Like an oxymoron, but they know that the people are under connotative linguistic social engineering control. Now, the name Semitic, not unlike Mendelssohn and Darwin, German, naturalists, etc. Semitic is a modern term or modern name created. It has no ancient origin, and it generally refers to people of Canaanite, Moabite descent, i.e. Asiatic African people, or people what you call your North African linguistic forum. And it's a general term. And so when they refer to the European Ashkenazi and Khazarian Jews, etc., as Semitic, they're actually lying, because in fact they are not Semitic at all, because they are really European hybrid stock. They're Occidentals. They're not even, of real Canaanite origin anyway, but because they did that issue with stealing the land and changing the maps under European colonial operations of this still the Spanish Inquisition under the popes of Rome, disguised as other things. And so essentially what they call Israel today is really Canaan, and Palestine is Canaan, and they changed the map and made an artificial nation in order to change history, the narrative of the people. And this is a known fact. We're not even talking deep scholarship, and everybody that's honest knows that. So when they're talking about that sister being anti-Semitic, they're really saying you're against yourself.
Right, because we don't.
Because she's Semitic. If anybody is, not them European Jews. Now that's the fact, and that's not anything against Europeans who claim to be Jews. It's just a simple fact and truth, and people need to know that. It's another reason why it's dangerous for people really not to have fundamental etymological skills. Fundamental. Those are fundamental.
Our people unfortunately tend to jump on these bandwagons of
because they're trained with belief systems. So beliefs are for dummies, imbeciles, rabbits, and people who aren't willing to handle reality.
The truth.
And so such persons, if they're adults, they're referred to as boys and girls, and sometimes referred to as minorities, because they usually are trained, not because they're not intelligent, but they're trained under the John D. Rockefeller system of education with the Frederick T. Gates and the Bertrand Russell operations of the education in North America, and they fundamentally can't read. And many of them are because of pride, will not take the time to really just study third grade grammar and go back to the fundamental rules. So that makes them subject, and many of our people, subject to connotative linguistics. And through the connotative linguistics, the European controls what they refer to as the narrative.
And they're doing it.
It's easily done. It's easily done. This is, again, and as you looked at last night, we had a few people in there, you know, who just came to the class, right, to the House of Reawakening Minds. And to show how simple this stuff is, we just pulled dictionaries off the shelf, didn't we?
Yeah.
Or didn't we?
Yeah,
Hand it to them and let them go through it and show them that they're not Black and show them that they're Moors.
But people, like you said, we've written songs about being Black. They have T-shirts about Black girls rock and
they're vested
Black and they don't want. They would rather go along with the deception.
They would rather be the hypocrite and condemn the truth than to really fix this thing, because they got a lot of leader guys and girls that they had all these meetings for, marched around the place making fools of themselves, raised millions of notes in the name of liberating our people, none of which ever reached the people. And all these marching leader guys are multimillionaires at the expense of the poor, when the real deal is the naturalization and nationalization or the decolonization of North America under the Special Committee of 24 since 1960, and the rights of Aboriginal and Indigenous people is really the argument that they should be making. But they're diverted into these marching around the places, making fools of themselves, begging for attention.
Well,
you know, I mean, it's like totally ridiculous.
Somebody asked a question earlier, and I can't get back up there, but I know they wanted you to address the 2020 census, because I know for a fact that every time now that I go to a doctor or someplace where I have to fill out a form, and they ask you
more.
I click put other and write in Moorish American. Now I'm figuring the people look at me and then change it to Black or African Americans,
because that's their property,
right? But I write on there.
But
what do you think? What can we do to influence the census so that we can have our proper identification? Or do we need to? Or do we even need to be a part of it?
Straightforward.
I want you to be.
Essentially, the people have been denationalized. To fix the problem, you have to reverse the process. That's straightforward, uncut, the answer. Now, the methods and the administration operations is in itself logically a political paradigm that we have to address, because it's the nation's business. But that's what has to be done. No different than, like you say, when we came up, you said the chair you bought, it's there, can't be used. Some screws and nuts have to go into it, right?
Right.
Perfect chair, isn't it? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Not functional to put the screws and nuts in it, right?
Right.
So it was designed with the screws and nuts, but for packaging, they took them out and then it goes in the box. Now, if you don't put the screws and nuts back, you don't fix it. Now, so how do you fix a people who are what is recognized all around the planet as stateless persons? That means persons who have no foundation of nation state or nationality and are subject to all kinds of abuses because of that status. Simple. You don't sit around, march and pray. You nationalize them. You do a tracer on their pedigree and their bloodline because it's traceable. And you take them out of a brand or caste system and put them back into their proper status. In the world, on planet Earth, all over the planet Earth, that is called nationalization. as an example, let's get an example, even with this thing that they're making all this fuss about, the sister in Congress, calling her anti-Semitic. They're calling her anti-Semitic because she spoke up for the Palestinians being genocided.
Right.
So to speak against genocide is anti-Semitic, implying that you're against European Jews. In other words, it's a lie. The foundation of their argument against her is a lie. And that's not, I'm not defending any, negative that she may have projected. That's just simply the fact. It's like somebody saying, please take your hands off my nose so I can breathe. Oh, you're against God. It's the same thing as saying that. But people who are controlled by what you call the European narrative will follow that and argue and call her anti-Semitic, never paying attention to what she actually said or even analyzing the words. Her arguments was that the European Jews misusing, murdering, genociding the Palestinians, Aboriginal people of the land who are real people of the land, is a war crime and is unlawful and should not be supported. Yeah. And they're calling that anti-Semitic. That's basically what they're saying.
Even though their leader was just recently indicted for crimes against humanity.
Yeah, of course. But see, even look how long that even took. And that has to
will anything become
because of other things that have taken place with other nation states, because that it was a wall of protecting all of them with that criminality, including the reconstructed history, the color of law, arbitrary activities taking place from the Vatican to Fleet Street in London, to Washington, D.C., networking to carry out the Spanish Inquisition and the unum sanctum policy against the Asiatic and African nations. And that's a fact. That's an absolute fact. And it's been protected.
Does Congress and the Constitution refer to the nationals of the land? I'm not sure.
Well, it's conditional. Now, under the Republic, you had what you call operations or treaty operations. So therefore, you had Asiatics and Europeans in the Congress. After 1861, every so-called congressman is actually a private oligarch operating as a board of director for the United States Service Corporation, which is now registered and operating from Puerto Rico. And that's a fact.
So they no longer represent their so-called state.
They never did. They never did since 1861.
Although we allegedly elect them
so
to
even
send
when
them
we call them Congress, in fact, we're kind of lying. There was no Congress for the United States Republic since 1861. And officially since 1871 with for all those who are listening, research the Organic Act of Congress 1871 in February and read between the lines at the same time. Also, look at what has been published for the entire world, which is the motu proprio of Pope Francis in 2013, which allegedly dissolves the activity of the doctrine of discovery, which has been operating, and that so-called paid-off black scholars have been calling racism and marching their people around, knowing that they're wasting their time, knowing that they were suffering under unum sanctum and the doctrine of discovery, etc. And so the deal of it is, if people really want to begin to solve some problems and really answer a lot of questions, study the true world history and stop accepting the narrative of mainstream news, because they're liars, bluntly, including their Negro marching leader guys who follow that narrative.
Who's the guy that we highly recommend? Steele. What's his name?
David Steele.
David something. He says three names.
Robert, I think it's
Robert David Steele.
Yeah, it used to be a CIA
agent. If you really want to hear some on Google I'm putting him down here, Robert David Steele. On YouTube?
Yeah, on YouTube.
I'm just putting YouTube.
Yeah. And then also read the Pope's letter that 2014 that Anna von Rich helped him draft that was mailed directly to Barack H. Obama. That'll give you a lot of the history, etc. But the major thing is that most of our people need to understand that the United States, written in different forms, is a private, for-profit human trafficking corporation, is not the country. The country that you're standing on in North America is Morocco, referred to as the Maghreb, Morocco, the most extreme west. This is what the treaty is based on, that Barack Obama exposed when he went to Egypt, and he exposed that the American Constitution comes from Muslim law, because it absolutely does. And so the deists that they refer to as the founding fathers, being, Madison, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, etc., they weren't Christians, they were deists. So that's just simply the fact. The people really need to know the real history, and those who know the real history should tell the truth and stop allowing our people to, to follow this false paradigm of reconstructed history. As an example, for all of you who are listening here at the House of Reawakening Minds.
Oh, we're
it's still the House of Reawakening Minds, because it is what it is.
It is what it is, yeah.
With all due respect.
We just in another studio.
Yeah. Like the average person, like those who know the real history of contemporary North America, know that John Hanson was the first president for the Republic, United States, and he was Moorish descent. And they also know that George Washington was the 9th president. However, for the training of rats and donkeys and persons under servitude, they're trained under miseducation that George Washington was the first president for the United States Republic. But it is known by all scholars around the world that he was the 9th. And that's just an example. And for any of those,
and he wasn't elected, was he?
No, he was appointed. And for for those others among our own who don't want you to know this information, because those are usually the trolls, go do the research for yourself, and you'll find out for yourself. As a point of fact, just deal with this with the Articles of Association, Articles of Confederation, and look when the Republic was established. You'll see it is 1781, and you'll see that George Washington was appointed 1789. What happened to those other 9 years? The other deal you'll recognize is that at that period of time, the president was the position was held only 1 year. So the change into the 4-year cycle was actually later. So any scholar knows that. But we
want to answer this question because the sister did ask it a while ago. I'm glad she repeated it. She says, should Moors in the UK territory be operating day to day as they would if they were on the USA territory, filing the same paperwork? In other words, what?
Well, look at it this way. Let's tell certain fundamental truths. The United States Corporation Company is operating in North America is a tributary colony of the UK. They're one jurisdiction.
Same with Canada.
And Canada and the United States Corporation have the same international number. How about that? So what does that tell you? This is back to the point where people's concept of foreign and distance, geographic distance, is corrupted. People need to understand that when you're talking foreign in politics, 90% of the time you're talking jurisdiction. And people are assuming that there's a jurisdictional separation when the monetary system and the court system operating at North America is run from Fleet Street, England, in London, including the monetary operations. So I think that should answer your question.
Well, so we are all...
No. Let's back up.
Okay.
Let's back up. It is hard for people to accept because psychologically, they've been thinking separate jurisdictions because it's hidden from them. It is no different than someone asking, well, does McDonald's in England, are their franchise of the head corporation of McDonald's that's located in Michigan or somewhere? It's the same exact thing. Okay. Now, the accents of the people will be different. In the UK, they're more traditional in their dress styles, although You know, among some of the young youth, they're more fly, like they are here in North America. But in general, they're more traditional. And by standards at North America, some of their clothing would look 1800s. Even some of the maintenance of this, you know, furniture styles, if you could, more conservative, you know, to that point. Even many of the colors are more muted, not as bright, you know. Now, so that would fit there, but not here. However, United States Service Corporation company operating in North America that has been artificially promoted as a country since 1871 and falsely is, in fact, UK colony, in fact, and it is run from the Circle Church and the Chancery on Fleet Street in London, District of London. So that should tell a lot of people a lot.
Here's another question. Do you have any knowledge of the Manchurian coming out with gold-backed currency?
That's, I would say this. That was sort of like part truth and part diversion. Because some of the Manchurian elders that reference are made to are actually operators under the Khazarian operation. Although, in fact, the United States Service Corporations have been running off of Manchurian gold since around 1954, 1955. In fact, the United States Corporation has no treasury. You know, so in relationship to the economics and the politics, that has much to do with the Manchurian, or what you call Chinese influence in North America to this date, that seems to take more of what you call frontline news now than it has over the past decades. And so people assume that there was no relationship, or that some of the things that they're hearing about right now are contemporary when you can put them a half a century back, if you get the point.
Yeah.
So when you look at the politics, kind of look at things a little differently.
We were listening today that we were saying that one of the things, you know, because first of all, we know that the United States U.S. Treasury is not federal, and that the so-called de facto government borrows from
and their private debt.
It's private
been
debt.
Trying to convert on the people of the land, the true Americans. In other words, this is what it is. You have de facto, translation,
fake.
Fraud,
fraudulent,
fake, artificial, alien people who've been calling themselves Americans, who have been controlling the land. So it's an interregnum governing body that are not legitimate, that is by corporate descent or secession, operating on the land at North America, and more specifically since 1781, who have been perpetrating a fraud against the people, building up artificial debt in the guise of actually robbing the nation and the people, and then dealing with the political paradigm of trying to convert their private debt onto the natural and true Americans, which is what they've been fraudulently promoting as, quote unquote, the national's debt or the national debt, when the nation has no debt whatsoever. The debt belongs to the private, broke, bankrupt United States Service Corporation that began its series of bankruptcy during the Lincoln administration. That's the fact.
Lee Muhammad Bey says, can't enforce the Constitution for the United States of America under Canada jurisdiction. That's like trying to enforce Mexico Constitution in Jamaica.
Well, now you're talking about political jurisdiction. The fact that they are actually united in secret is not for the purpose of your benefit.
Okay.
No different than you have.
Is that the same thing as Republican and Democrat?
Exactly.
One bird, two wings.
Both of them, Ku Klux Klan. Knights of Malta, Ku Klux Klan, Knights of Columbus. Now, that's what's happening. You know, neither one of them is for you.
Yeah.
It stopped being for you when they closed down the Freedmen's Bureau and bumped Lincoln off. That was the last, your connection to the legitimate order of government. It's usually referred to as step down or die type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know you heard that phrase before.
Yeah, they they just we realize certain ththings, but you just kind of try
we don't make connections.
Yeah.
And again, and that's because people have changed the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, when you really go into the history, even 50, 60, say 70 years back, you weren't arguing race and color.
Mm-hmm.
Although those paradigms were being developed for social use, you were talking nationality and inheritance.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me see. We got some more questions here. Good, Craig, because my desk, I think the line's down. Okay, let me get up here, see what it is. Has the bank, going back, has the bank,
international settlements,
or the IMF placed a lien on the U.S. Service Corporation? The IRS is the servicer for collection.
All right, let's look well, that is absolutely true. But let's look at this. Isn't this interesting? When you really don't understand the politics, it shows you how they can build what you call different corporate shells and convert the assets of one to another under the guise that is being sold or transferred when it's the same thing. So the IMF is the Jesuits. International Bank for Settlements is the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is the U.S. corporation company with a different name. So what they're trying to do, if you really look at it, is control the paradigm of the transfer for the reset of the financial system, which is being pulled from their hands. Are we clear? And so the Bank of International Settlements is the bank for all of the 12 districts of the Jesuit order of the Khazarian operations, faking as Jews, etc., which we call the Federal Reserve and the IRS, all of which are the United States in different names, in different iterations.
Here's a question. What significance does our flag have when we are wearing it in public? And aren't policy enforcers supposed to honor it before approaching?
Now, let's keep it very simple. As we're speaking, always take in consideration Act 6 of the Moorish Science Temple of America in the bylaws, constitutional bylaws, the Moorish Temple of Science, and then deal with Article 6 of the Constitution for the United States. Also dealing with Article 3 of the Constitution for the United States. And you can see that the treaty and the Constitution comprise together the supreme law of the land. With that being so, your question is answered. They're already obligated. So they're in breach, aren't they? So that means it's an act of treason when they don't.
Which leaves that question here. How do we hold them accountable?
Start holding your own people accountable for not declaring their nationality. And start looking at the fact that we've both been in violation and accept responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And start flying your colors like other humans do, showing that you honor your mothers and fathers and that you are claiming your estate.
Here's one of our brothers, I think, from the UK. He says UK is aware of Moors and common law, as the UK law came from Muslim law, found partly in Hindustan. I guess in Hindustan.
Of course.
Yeah.
People who know the real history know that.
Mm-hmm.
We're not in conflict. The deal of it is the people who you've been assuming are the law are what? Arbitrary, feudal law operators. Mm-hmm. They are de facto. When you start doing the research, you'll find that the unlawful de facto operators are implying that constitutionalists are unlawful. And the people who don't know law have been putting that to question when the reality is they're questioning the wrong side. It's like people got and broke in somebody's house and they want to throw the people who own the house out.
Hmm.
The guy who broke in the house, robber, sitting at the table eating a peanut butter sandwich, crying to him out, they're taking all my shit. And they want to throw the owner of the house, the people of the house out.
I'm just making a connection. If I could put this, there's someone who said they were looking for the Moors in the UK and couldn't find them. So I'm going to put.
All right. If he's of Asiatic African descent, you just found him.
Yeah, but I just put, yeah, because he's from UK. So
but I understand what he means.
No, that's a she who says.
I know. I understand what she means. However, reality is it's sort of like a Chinese saying, a Chinese being in some other area saying, I haven't found any Chinese. You look in the mirror.
Conscious
Look in the mirror.
Maybe not conscious, but you see them all around.
Now, so what do we have to start doing? We have to qualify our statements, because you understand how the narrative is controlled. You cannot use connotative language in a serious conversation. It fails. You see the point?
Right. Now this it says the corporation Benjamin Franklin set up, is that really the U.S. Postal Service?
No. We're talking about the United States Service Corporation. Do some research.
Okay.
That was appointed and supposed to get the 19 enumerated powers, which Lincoln bankrupted, because the fact of the matter is that they ran Lincoln on that platform, because being a member of the bar, according to fatwa or Muslim law, they cannot hold an office in the United States, the republic, not the democracy that was later established under fraud. Keep this in mind. Under the republic, a member of the bar, and this is due to their allegiance to the secret treaty of Verona, could not hold an office in the United States because their missionary work was to overthrow the republic. Lincoln deliberately bankrupted the United States Service Corporation when they tried to use him to overthrow the republic, and he was not cooperating, so he bankrupted them. So that began that whole series of operations that led up to the Congress adjourning sine die, including the assassination of Lincoln, which including the law case with Charles Shinoke of Opus Dei, and a few other things, and of course the issues with him countering their doctrine of discovery with stealing our land. All those combined with the issue of them murdering Lincoln, including him trying to back the operations of the republic with monetary backing coming from our jurisdiction, as opposed from the Jesuit order of the Jesuits via the Illuminati operations on the dark side with the bankers of the Circle Church, etc., which later becomes your Federal Reserve. So that's why Lincoln was bumped off. You got to put these things in perspective. Really, because once people really know that a lot of the history, a lot of the really keys of the history, the rest of the politics and the motives fall right in places like a puzzle. You can see it.
I think you kind of addressed this question. Maybe she came on later, but she says, April says, I have a question. It's interesting that our grandparents and our great-grandparents have never referenced our parents as Africans, mostly as Native American, Cherokee, Pequot, and such. He says, so does that tell us that the slave trade was not as significant as we've been told, because we were already here?
The general slave trade is a fraud. It's reconstructed history, including Native American. They made that up in around 1930 area. That's a social paradigm too.
Who are those that are? Who are the ones that are on the reservation
and
now?
We are Cherokee, what we call, like in my family, it's Anayanwea.
Who is it that they have on the reservation?
Mostly Shemites. And they're mostly like Asiatics. They're Moors and what you call Chinese or Chinese Manchurians, Asiatics. And they've been here with us for thousands of years. They didn't just, Europeans didn't bring them in just to do some railroads like they tell you in history. The Manchurians have been here with us on this side of the water for millennia, even during the time before the Great Earthquake. So the real deal, and most of what you call the mixtures of the Moors, or what you call the darker Asiatic stock with the more hybrided Asiatic stock is represented as Native Americans in the pictures that the Europeans present as an image, which is a false image. They are indigenous, we are Aboriginal.
Okay.
And Native American was made up just like Negro American was. And just like Jesse Jackson made up African American in 1968. All those are contemporary terms. And the deal of it is, what the European does is he makes up social paradigms, we adopt it, and that puts us under his jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. Get over it, we're Moors. And on the islands, they'll be called sometimes maroons. Get over it. Know yourself.
Gerald Bay says, I have notes that are silver certificates that cannot be exchanged for silver coins.
Because they ain't going to give them to you.
I'd like to change them over to silver coins.
Well, now you're dealing with a de facto platform called the U.S. Democracy, whose members of the Ku Klux Klan party, called Democrats and Republicans, set that platform up for the purpose of stealing your gold and silver coins. So are they going to give you their gold and silver coins for their worthless debt notes that they imposed upon the people? Answer your own question. Until that platform is corrected and changed and those people are removed, we ain't getting shit, to put it bluntly. So let's get over it. I mean, look, one thing we got to start doing is being realistic. Why are we nationalizing these people? Why are we telling these people to nationalize? They themselves have to change the paradigm. The people that are in office are de facto. They're unlawful. They came to steal your gold and silver, which they have successfully done. You think they're going to change the counterfeit note that the people think is money for the gold and silver that they've stolen?
As Byron, let me see, let me go back over here. Well, O'Neill says the Europeans came on slave ships. That's right. I have a book back here called White Cargo.
Of course. Because the word slave applies to Europeans,
Slovakians, yeah.
And this is where people need to understand the paradigm of connotative linguistics. And we keep trying to take certain paradigms back into a time when it did not exist. And it's understandable, but we've got to start cleaning that up.
We are the original Europeans.
Exactly, because even the European, they're Albion. But that's not a secret. You know, so Europa is the Asiatic queen who took some responsibility for their care. Even the land of Angles that you call Ingla land today, you know, it was Asiatics. So when you go into European history and you talk about the Danes and the Picts, they were Moors. That's not a secret. Anybody can go to Europe and the UK and start doing research on the Picts and the Danes and the Moors. They're all Moors, superseding the pale stock of the Occidental stock that were later ceded. The land was ceded to them. They're not technically even Europeans. So that's the true history. It's not a secret, you know, but we're putting things into perspective of current politics. Because the current hybrid Europeans have done what? Through their doctrine of discovery. They have literally, in a sense, conquered the world. Although they're losing their soul now, they have gained the whole world and have deceived the whole world. And it's what it is. And so the complexities that we're dealing with in social economics are a result of the Spanish Inquisition. And they cannot be fixed without people addressing the truth of how we got to where we are now. This is why so-called black scholars, you understand, must be called to the table for the fraud that they've adopted and put on their own people, avoiding dealing with the reality of how we got to where we are today and how they keep on taking the brand systems of the German Dutch masters and taking it retroactive in history in its linguistic form and calling African people black. They're not black. They have nationalities. Stop insulting civilized people just because some of these people have become conversos. And we need to stop defending these fake black scholars who keep on pumping a fraud narrative and know they are, but they know that our people don't have a background in history and jurisprudence. And that's been allowing them to get away with this, including the fact that the Europeans corporations have been backing the black so-called groups and black organizations, making them think that under the 14th Amendment, they're going to get a nigger cookie.
Oh my!
And so people out of ignorance keep supporting them.
It's someone here. Someone says William Amalone Bay says the Irish was the first slaves here. Talk about the so-called snakes that St. Patrick
So even when you're
alleged.
talking St.
Aren't you
Patrick's Day,
talking Moors?
go in, yeah, exactly. So when you
St.
go,
Patrick's Day is
so
tomorrow,
when you go,
y'all.
yeah,
That's my look. That's my solar return. But
St. Patrick's Day, of course, mine's Valentine's Day. So
yeah, we got those.
They didn't hook us up.
We came on those.
Yeah.
But anyway, talk about the so-called snakes.
St. Patrick's Day in Asiatic African culture is also referred to as Tag Day. And the running the snakes out of Ireland is when they ran the Moors out of Ireland. Now that's the truth. And so get over it, y'all. I
learned that there were some little people, little small. We were in Ireland, and those so-called leprechauns.
Those would be amongst the same that you're talking in England, or that's called England, now the UK, and they refer to as the Picts and the Danes. Right. And as a matter of fact, even when they made reference to our little children, they refer to them as pickaninnies. Yeah. Because we are the Picts. Y'all need to know your history.
Yeah, it's interesting.
You really need to know your history. And what is this? Moorish Latin means little child.
What the
Pequeño, Pickaninny.
And I know from some people they'll call
people need to know their history. Our people being mentally disconnected from the land on both sides of the water. We need to understand European colonial operations and reconstructed history, which would include what? False geography.
And false religion. Somebody asked.
False religion is called dogma.
Right.
False money is called fiat. And private commercial paper. False law is called color of authority, color of law, color of office, all of which are operative. So most of the questions that most people would ask who don't know these fundamentals would be contaminated by virtue of them not being aware of that. That's why we make as much effort as we can of putting those fundamental truths back into place so that the people can come from a cleaner canvas, not clean canvas, because we still got a lot of work to do, a cleaner canvas. Because as long as your canvas is dirty, the picture's dirty. And so our concepts are incorrect because our canvas of thought or reference points are contaminated. This will be traced back to these two major tools used by Inquisitionists. Index Librorum Prohibitorum, Index Librorum Expurgatorius, generally referred to as the Christian book burnings, which is why today most of our people suffer miseducation and misunderstanding and the inability to connect themselves to land, government, and the illustrious nobles of the planet because they lack that knowledge.
I had a young pastor about a month or so ago ask me what he wanted to know what was going on during the 400 years, alleged 400 years between the end of the Old Testament and the beginning of the New Testament. And so I said, I can tell you what was going on. I said, that would coincide, and we've talked about that, with the Reconstruction. Yeah. Because now you got the Piso family and their lineage, the Piso family writing and connecting the old to the new and doing the stuff, reconstructing history at the same time they were doing that story.
The Reconstruction
and then they say God was silent, of course, because they were too busy constructing the.
No, even when they say that, right? Like, all right. When I was 12 and 13, I used to, collect books since when I was young too. And I had Bibles that were coupling with human skin. And it wasn't the King James version. It was Prince James. Mm-hmm. And so even when you have these versions, they'll even tell you in the beginning that they were translated out of their original tongue and with the former translations diligently compared. Now, I recall when I was around between 13 and 15 in that era, doing some research. At that time, they had over that I could trace with my limited skills, because I wasn't that smart. So with my limited skills, I traced about 136 translations at that time. Now, I haven't been addressing that as an issue as of late.
What happens is I found that when we speak of translations, every time they so-called discover a new people group,
Mm-hmm.
they make a new translation, mm-hmm. and that people learn that they crucified Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
They seriously they write it, and that new they show them the video on a big old sheet, and they got somehow that people they crucified Jesus, and now in order for them to redeem themselves, they've got to give their lives to Jesus and for redemption.
And if any of you are fortunate enough to have any old Bibles, particularly with Prince James, share them and take the time to maybe call into the House of Reawakening Minds and share the entry pages, because the people will quickly discover that the adulation that is allegedly given to Jesus in your modern so-called contemporary churches, Protestant houses, etc., that adoration was given to Prince James. And all they did was remove those pages and now promote it in the name of Jesus.
Yeah.
And now most people who read the Bible, King James Version, think that the perspective that is presented of Jesus was always the perspective. No, it was that honor was given to Prince James. And it become obvious that these people are kind of like out to lunch a little bit.
Yep.
Particularly people who keep promoting the Christian dogma in the name of Jesus, knowing that they're lying to the people. Because we're not even talking about the older Bibles. We're talking about just when he was Prince James. And this is, again, for those sellouts here, while they honored, Prince James and called him King James and named the James River that's going down through Virginia. Virgin land and Mary's land, mm-hmm. and the Virgin Mary, Virginia and Maryland, and the James River. Think it has no connection? It absolutely does. It's for mind control. Change the names, and after a while you mold the people, and then you control the people, and you have claim over their estate, because you got claim over their minds.
Yeah.
And therefore the European has declared himself successfully God.
And that is so, yeah.
I think that's in the book of Thessalonians 1 and 2, since they, people talk about the book.
Yeah, if we didn't answer your question and it may have been too far up, I can't, for some reason, Facebook is not letting me go all the way back up.
It's kind of locking, they're trying to control the narrative.
Wait a minute. No, okay.
Yeah, I see it.
No, not that one, but that's not the question.
Know you keep trying to.
I keep trying to go up, but it won't let me. So let me go forward and just see some. And if you want to repeat it, if unless it was, copy religion, false money, false courts, false for the false black people. Okay. Why is it we still as Moors can't come together if our lives depended on it? And it does. Wow.
It's because half the people, their concepts are wrong. Remember, still, many of the active Moors that you see now are dealing more with civics and scholarship, and it's less hard to reason with them. However, some Moors are still in the controlled mentality that Moor is a religion, and therefore they still are subject to the schism operations of J. Edgar Hoover and Calvin Coolidge since 1924, 25 in that area, when they set up the COINTELPRO operations. And so that is the basis. And plus, our people have been trained under their schism operations of the Constantinians to identify with their clubs and not with their pedigree. And that's the origin of the schismata, which is the military term that the European used, making references to the Moors in their divisions amongst each other, which represents the divide and conquest operations. So you're looking at social engineering.
This is long. Let me see. Where will we go from here? Moors need proof to believe they are Moors, bodies and okay, yeah, he's putting quite a bit of stuff. Hey, Christians, read the Geneva. Okay. All right, I'm just trying to go through some of the questions. So, okay. Oh, okay. Carlita Jarrett asked, what is the process of, okay. We can, I'll send her, well, obviously she's new, new to knowing this. I think a couple people have responded to her. Anyway, Grand Sheik's views on the consulate in its current role, Islam.
Basically, the principle is this. The consulate represents Moors who are active and not passive in enforcing the Constitution, particularly in the judicial matters that deal with logically rights and estates, i.e. Article 3 of the Constitution, which is the duty of all Moorish Americans, all nationals, and all true American citizens. That's the answer.
Well, you also agree that it's needed. Because there's some that don't.
Well, they can, look, put it this way. Anyone that knows anything about the works of Noble Drew Ali and the works of Marcus Mosiah Garvey understand that a major part of their work was teaching governmental principles to our people. Now, one of the major missions of the Moorish Yvani national movement of the world and of North America is the enforcement of the Constitution for the United States. The consulate is the natural, from a law perspective, venue by which our communications were to be made with any what you call diverse party, i.e. Europeans, in treaty and in constitutional enforcement. It's called Article 3, Section 2, which deals with ambassadors and consuls, etc. That is the venue because it deals with diversity of citizenship and diversity of nationality, not only with Moorish Americans, but also with people of different states, etc., as the states themselves, in part in union for the United States, are essentially designated as nations in union. And that's a fact. So the foundation of that Constitution is a diversity platform. And thus, the consulate is the necessary operations for Moorish Americans to start exercising their five senses and carrying out the law and carrying out the principles of the Moorish movement that they agreed to when they took that nationality card.
Let me see. I pinned a couple. This brother's put his question twice. He basically is saying, he said he's been talking, well, here it is. I'm talking to my dad about the Bible. Tell him Jesus is a mythological person called Caesar and we are the true gods. Is that fact, or am I approaching my father correctly?
Well, that's if he's saying it like that, then that's not exactly correctly because you're not giving him reference points. Number two, because God is a generic term. That's number one. Right. See, so, and this is again how the European controls the narrative. Some assumed positions without qualifications, connotative linguistics. The word God is Middle English from 1150 to 17 in that area, 1115 to 1500, derived from Old High German, which essentially comes from gut, which essentially means good. It's not a negative.
So when they say all God is good all the time, and all the time God is good, they tell the truth.
Which is like they're telling the absolute truth. They're saying good is good.
Yeah.
And God is not the name of the creative forces. It is a transitive word applied to the energy, latent energy of the creative forces, and applies to anything, including negative forces. And so you can have what they call like the priesthood who promote it as the name of the creator falsely would turn around in the same breath and say Satan is the god of this world because it is a transitive verb. It is not a noun. Now that's simply a fact. So that has to be put in perspective.
This is from the Kabbalistic of the, and this is what you basically see what God is. God is a verb.
Oh, well, I mean, that's known by all scholars.
and they know it. So this is.
So you got to start, and this is where, how do you say, when people, this is how the European controls the narrative, and this is how mind control works. When people accept the connotative meanings of words
Mm-hmm.
that are created deliberately by social engineers that automatically gives them jurisdictions over that person's thoughts. So when people grow up thinking that God is the supreme being, not that their intentions are negative, if you understand,
Mm-hmm.
they're already under the mind control system. This is one of the reasons why Rome rules the world.
Mm-hmm.
So again, while you're trying to straighten up your father, you'd be best going into understanding, say, going to the history of the development of the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed, which is the official name of Christianity, and the operations of Constantine and Pope Sylvester with the tithing system, etc., and also in the linguistic form, knowing that J wasn't even in the language, and it definitely isn't in any of your Semitic languages, i.e. in Arabic, Aramaic, or Ibri, that they call Hebrew, etc. There is no J. And so there could never have been a so-called Jesus coming from any of the Moabite Canaanite tribes, of which the one that they called Jesus was Moabite. And his grandmother was Ruth the Moabitess, and they got a book for her in the Bible. So Ruth was a Moabitess, and so was the one that they called Jesus, which is a password. And if that personality was the reality that they present, he was Yahshua ben Yosef, and some call him Yahshua Pentera, or Yahshua, son of Yusuf, etc. Now that's a fact. And so, first of all, you want to say go to the Nicene Council of 325 and 781 and take their own records and prove that the doctrine that they have, that they're teaching the world now in the name of Jesus, came from the bishoprics of Rome, having nothing to do with any of the ancient gods in the sense that people have what they think the gods are or are not. Now that's the real true fact. You can just trace that through their own records. And close, you can do a little bit of research on one they call Serapis and put it all together and give them their own records, and give that to your father, and that'll straighten them up right overnight if he wants to really listen.
Hope that answers your question. One thing I would just add to it, me having, gone through what I did, awakening from being a pastor, apostle, and, walking in that office of deception for such a long time. I found that the first thing you want to do is tell everybody what you learn. You want to share that, and you learn as time goes by that not everybody wakes up at the same time, and that
it's like every piece of fruit don't ripen on the tree at the same time.
And in the natural, if somebody is awakened abruptly, get angry. Yeah. So you have to, I tell you have to be the change that you want to see, and eventually people will kind of look and say something different about you, or you'll know. I always know when somebody's ready to hear the truth that I have, because they
usually they'll
ask something that'll open the door, and I say, okay, now I can tell. I'm not just going to go and say,
ready to receive.
Hey, did you know that Jesus is?
You can't convince them.
No, it doesn't work like that. So
rejection. They
will come to you when it's time. We say when the student is ready, the teacher appears. That's how it is. Well, anyway, what advice do you have for people after they proclaim their nationality and put it on record, such as doing business in your free national name, selling business in your all caps name, such as discharging debts, etc.?
This is what I would have. Concentrate on dismantling the corrupt system, and all other things will fall in place. Translation: seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all other things will be added unto you. Because the real deal of it is, they, as long as they're in power, will control the straw, because that's their instrument. Although it may sound like us, it is not us, nor are we ever allowed to tap it.
Okay. So
I would say for most people, start learning trust law, put everything in trust, declare your nationality, which also kills the bond system that they create, including their birth certificate, their CUSIC number on the Social Security, etc. Because whenever nations buy those instruments, they're buying dead paper, which is what's happening today all over the world, which is causing, by virtue of people proclaiming their nationality, what is called the reset. And the reset is not just monetary, it's the reinforcement of the Constitution for the United States. And if you don't believe that's true, talk to some of the diplomats in the different nation states from Ecuador to Honduras, to Russia, to China, to Japan. And in the background, the reset, a lot of people think it is just the monetary system. No, the other nations are forcing them to enforce the Constitution for the United States, i.e. go back to the Republic format. There you go. And it comes with the natural people declaring their nationality. And all other systems offered to them by the de facto government operators is usually colored and designed to buy them time.
Rob Freedom says, Islam, I'm trying.
As an interim, too, I also want to interject this. And I know many of you are aware of United States Codes 95 subsection A and B, where the discharge and debt obligation is on the United States corporation. However, every time that anyone tries to discharge, what do? They attack them and pretend that such persons are violating law when they know that those persons are absolutely correct. I just want to remind you of that they never honor it. And so they must be removed from those positions.
I'm new to learning about my status as a Moor. Any books I should have that are essential to further my knowledge? Can
I put it this way? Your status, not as a Moor. So an elephant isn't as an elephant isn't an elephant or not. You're a Moor or you're not. That's the deal. As say if you were.
He corrected me yesterday on the same.
I'm saying the point. We got to stop that as a Moor stuff. You're being Moor. The fact that you always was, you was born that. So put it this way, you're about your learning to correct your status, being Moorish or Al-Moroccan. So you can say Moorish American, Moor. Now, so the deal of it is starting off is starting into basic dictionaries and looking at it yourself to see that you are. And the rest of it starts falling in place. Keep it simple. First of all, you got to get to the consciousness, the natural consciousness that is your pedigree, that's your bloodline. That's who you are. Now, your culture and your traditions must come in harmony with that. And politically, for sake of your economics, you got to come into the constitutional fold of government. Back into the constitutional fold of government, because foreigners have been stealing your estates. And that's the basis of our economic problems. And those foreigners are fake Europeans, faking that they're Americans and have not been challenged. So look at it from that perspective, and other things that you're asking will start falling in place.
Watch the videos. There are lots and lots and lots of videos on YouTube, even if you just put, Moorish American in the search. Not all are created equal, but there's we've been doing videos from the House of Reawakening Minds with Grand Sheik since 2011. Mm-hmm. So there's quite a plethora.
Yeah, and then you have honorable Moors.
Right, there are others.
You have honorable Moors in the Moorish Science Temple of America who will share information with you. You have honorable Moors from other organizations that will share information with you, books, etc. You can get Stanley Lane Poole's book on Moors in Spain, which is kind of misnomer because it should be Moors in Al-Andalusia, because it wasn't called Spain until after the Moors' fall. You can look at Ancient and Modern Britons, David McRitchie. It's 2 volumes. You can look at some of Dr. Ben's, Jokinen's story on his life and his education. Yes. You can look at the first Americans were Africans, another one. Yeah. The brother on the cover that looks a little bit like 50 Cent. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
We come back.
But the deal of it is, but basically, it has to do, I think it's more of people really getting it clear in their mind that that's their pedigree. And everything else just falls right in place.
This one's a good one, too.
Guns, germs, and steel.
That's what they kind of brought here to us. Guns, germs, steel. La, 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 la. I got so many books here. I want to knock anything down. What was I going to say? Oh, also, Carlton Proctor says, can you speak on the clock of destiny and what the people need to do with that, how they can obtain the documents and or what to do with it?
Well, now there's two processes. Remember, we have the humanitarian school in Cleveland, Ohio, and trustfully, some of the operators of the school system who have maintained the integrity of CMBA's platform, you should be able to get the clocks of destiny through them. Now, years ago, we had a process by which you would send it, or apply for certificates at the Library of Congress, and then we would deliver them to you. However, like most literatures, it's been available to most people anyway out there. You just got to find a few who have it. And then if you purchase the Clocks of Destiny 1 and 2 in CMBA, try to get in contact with those who are running the school in Cleveland, Ohio, so that you can say send a donation or some contribution to them for maintaining CMBA's work out there in the schools, not to be confused with people who just happen to be related to the operations, etc. However, what it does, it gives you a lot of information that otherwise would be maintained in what you call privy council or adept chamber, and generally hidden from the masses in general, and also would be considered what they would refer to as Masonic secrets. But remember, Nudrali said, I pulled the cover off all secret organizations. And so when you're looking at CMBA's work, look at some of those secrets being uncovered. And that's how you want to look at the Clocks of Destiny 1 and 2, including the fact of the restoration of the knowledge of the geometric operations of the equinoxes of the sun, or what is called in chapter 1 of the Circle 7 Quran, stations of the sun, which are really a knowledge of your culture for guidance purposes.
Okay. Kenneth Pulido says, as a Mexican living in North America, do I need to correct my status? The only legal ID.
You're Mexican, you're legitimate because you're already of Moorish descent and you're already American.
It's the only legal ID that I have with me is my passport.
Legal
that I got
does not mean lawful.
Well, so that I got in the Mexican consul here in the Colorado state.
Yes, I understand. So now you're seeing naturalization, aren't you?
Well, that's
you're
not
seeing
true.
No, I'm just saying we're talking political.
Okay.
You're seeing naturalization processes that we were talking about earlier. So now you're not talking bloodline in that sense. You're talking political jurisdiction.
Because really, we need
because that. Mexicans are Americans. Now, all of us, just like you have, and I'm sure being Mexican, you are conscious that people who think that human beings are have different colors, aren't aware of what I know that you're aware of, and that's the Organization of American States. That's the organization of the true American states recognizing their political sovereignty. And the fundamental principles of what that represents, or the unity of America, should be promoted by you and others so that we can eliminate the fakery of you or any other true American having some card issued by some fake American Europeans under some corporate entity, corporate state of Colorado, which is a private corporation and not an American state whatsoever. I just want to make that point too. See, so our concepts got to be fixed about a lot of things. And there's another point of the nature of the Moorish movement to clarify that whole false paradigm of fake Americans. You're Mexican, you're already American, you're just in another part of your house.
Yeah, well, thank you. I got until somebody wishing me a happy birthday, solar return, but I got till 12:20. That's when I'm official. But we're not gonna stay on here till 12:20. But I thank you.
I was getting teepee anyway.
Yeah, I know you are. You sitting there, you kind of leaning over there like that. Like, yeah, I got what about 2 hours, and then I'll be 1 year old.
No, it'll be on the hour of your birth.
12:20 a.m.
That's when it was.
12:20 a.m.
All right.
And 6 plus 4 is 10. Reduced to 1, I'll be 1. Start again at 1. I'm getting tired. You see me, I'm talking silly now. Y'all, are you all enjoying office hours? How often do you want to see office hours?
We need to do this earlier.
Yeah, we were going to do it earlier, but we didn't do it earlier. So now we're getting batty. Let me see. Let me try to get a couple more questions in. We're going to go for let's go to 11. We got 12 minutes. Yeah. Is that good?
Mm-hmm. Let's go.
You going to be able to put it on? Let me see if I can get, okay. I'm confused. Some people who declare, this is Garland Green. Hi there. I'm confused. Some of our people who declare themselves Indians or Aboriginal don't claim they are Moors. Can you explain the Moorish and Indigenous American connection?
All right. Number one, look at the history. The first of the Moors who were called Indians are in the Carib area, or the Atlantis, last of the Atlantis Islands, the archipelago, that they call Dominica, Haiti, etc., Borican, etc., i.e. the Arawak and Taino of the Caribs. The Europeans called us Indians because they were trying to take over the trade routes of the Moors, trying to take over what you call in the area of Sindh, that's later called Hindustan, which is later called India, and Madagascar, which is why they make the cartoons, etc., and showing you the little animals with the pheasants,
we saw video today, and most of the people from Madagascar look just like us.
Yes, they was taking over the spice trades and all that kind of stuff.
All and the movies they show with Madagascar are like animals and cartoons.
Of course, because they tell us
like the real people of Madagascar look like us.
Because they are us.
All we've seen is like elephants and mastodons and things in the frozen. Yeah. It didn't even look like a place that has frozen stuff. It just looked like.
Yes. So we're identifying how the Moors were artificially called Indians by Europeans. So see how the question is structured as if the Indian paradigm is a reality of a bloodline. Mm-hmm. And this is where we talk about people need to know history and law, because they'll take terms that the European made up, like Indian and Native American, which are total European constructs, and try to make them legitimate as far as pedigree and bloodline, and it's totally false. Mm-hmm. But that's the connection. In other words, the Europeans called the Moors Indians because you're dealing back with Columbo's voyages, etc., because they thought they were going to Madagascar and Hindustan or Sindh, that you call today India. And so Pedro the Moor navigated the Nino, took them to the Atlantis Islands, and the first thing they said, well, we didn't reach India, so we'll call them West Indians. And that's how that came about. And that's where the term Indian came from. Never to the north, it was actually at the islands. And so the people who were willing to go under the social programs of the Europeans, particularly in the early teens and in the early 30s, agreed to be Indians so they could get benefits, thinking they were going to get better sandwiches. And so the Moors who agreed to be Indians, they put them on reservations and start starving them and feeding them drugs and stuff. But this is not India. North America is not India. South America is not India. The islands are not India, and we're not Indians. We're Moors.
Here's a couple of comments I want to make, because I know there's some people that regularly listen, and they're not Moors. But they listen at regular. And they're in this particular comment says, Ben Silver, I'm not a Moor, but I've learned a lot from your teachings, and I thank you. I'm trying to live a righteous life and separate myself from this wicked world. Do you have classes with people that are not Moors? I guess I just consider myself as a son of the Father I am.
Yes, and that's good, because I am that I am too. You know, the deal of it is Moorish history is essentially world history, and that's really the truth.
So you really can come to the same
because Moorish
classes.
history deals with the human family. In real truth, it does. So even though you may not be Moorish by pedigree, it's still your history. And this is, again, why you can relate, because we're talking about the human condition. And Moorish history is primal because it is the defeat of the Moors that has caused the fall of the world. In fact, the entire modern world's history is predicated position against the Moors. Half the nation states that people recognize as nation states today didn't exist 150 years ago. That's a fact.
And I think when you're teaching, and it may seem sometimes like it's all leaning towards us, but we're trying to play catch up. Because
It's
first
really
of all,
human
we don't know
history.
who we are. We don't know who we are. So you got to tell the Moors and remind them. That's what reawakening minds. You got to remind them and bring it back in from their cellular
that
DNA memory
really
who they are.
Starting to be yourself. That's
and
all
but
it
that
is.
what I was going to say is that's not to. We're not
That doesn't
exclude the rest of, because
it includes the rest of
all
the
of
world.
us.
You can't study European history without studying Moorish history. That's the truth.
Right.
So when you look at it that way, not because I say so, because it's true. So just let's start dealing with human reality.
Yeah.
And the fact. So put it this way. The fact of the matter is the entire human family can be traced, truthfully, back to the ancient Canaanite Moabite nation, i.e., in short, Americans, i.e., in short, Moors. That's it. That's just the truth. And they'll just tell it in a different way. They'll say that the entire human family can be traced back to the African woman, i.e., she's the mother of the human family. Now, that's the genetic fact, even though we have hybrid problems later on in what you would call surrogate mother operations, some willingly and some by force.
Genetic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Surrogation.
Yeah.
So it might be referred to in the book of Genesis with Rebecca. And so Rebecca is actually symbolic of actually a series of women of 12 in actuality.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Now, then you have...
all that were used in the genetic... yeah.
Yes.
See, we get hung up on that Adam and Eve story and forget that's the story.
But it's actually plural.
Yeah.
You know, just like, for instance, people look at Elohim. They'll say Elohim means God. No, Elohim does not mean God.
No.
And Elohim means God's plural. It is plural. And it doesn't even mean it that way. It actually means mother, father. Elohim actually means mother, father. It is a plurality in itself.
Would that be sort of the what we call the hermaphrodite? Also, you know how we were talking about originally. See, getting into my stuff now. But the beings that we started at had both.
Yes.
No differentiation between male and female.
This is why it gets confusing when people.
So chapter 2 is the separation of the sexes. It makes it look like, oh, now God's making
even the Adam and Eve story is an implication to the separation of a hermetic form.
Right.
Hermaphrodite.
It's not good for man to be all one, or they call.
Now, understand the rib taken from Adam to Eve.
Was it really?
In other words, it's a split, but it's not really the way it's talked about.
Right.
If you get the point, you're dealing with the evolution, and
but
you're dealing with the atomic structure.
But you know what they taught? They said God said it's not good for man to be alone. Mm-hmm. But what it really said was it's not good. Whoever the geneticist was said it's not good for man to be all one. Mm-hmm. Said hence the separation of and the eventual bringing us to a place where we can begin to reproduce within ourselves.
And then look at it itself. Yeah. Look at your old Pythagorean temples as an example, where it was common in culture, in the ancient of ancient worlds, where women gestated or stimulated, electrified the ovums without the help of the sperm of the male, which is an electrical charge.
Right.
And this is where you get the traditions of the ancient, what people call today, you know, which was
Amazon.
You might call them in those days Quran, etc., or what evolved and what to the Europeans call today gods, etc., or champions.
Demigods.
And this is where women produced offspring without the mating of the male. And they had special temples where that was done. So of course not done today because we've fallen so far. But the deal of it is, so even when you're looking at the anthropomorphic stories of Adam and Eve, etc., you know, you will see the hermaphrodite nature of the being split. And then you'd have to get into more of the metaphysical Kabbalistic teachings in order to recognize that, and away from the anthropomorphic format.
Yeah, we're running out of time. I just lastly, Carl Amul QL says, if her land is Morocco, why? I guess he means why do we call it America?
Because Morocco is America. Go into your history. Go into your grammatical form. Yeah.
So thank you, Taj. I wish you a health, long life. Take turmeric. Somebody's giving you some black sea oil, etc. We thank you. We thank you all for your comments, and unfortunately, thank you for everybody who's wishing me a happy solar return. Thank you so much.
Happy solar return.
We also want to just say thank you. We wanted to thank our supporters.
Yes, I want to thank all of you for supporting the House of Ram.
House of Reconnecting Minds.
You know, in spite of opposition of people who really didn't want this information out to the masses, because many people who have this information have made concerted effort to troll us to try to block this information because they really didn't want the people to develop. Because again, as the people learn, it kind of takes their hands out of these people's pockets and takes their pressure off these people's minds because they're not as easily steered or controlled. And it also takes the ring out of a lot of people's noses. And so for all due honor, you know, support the House of Ram as the House of Ram is in place to support you. And thank you all for your support, past and present, and in
we
future.
Appreciate it. We do appreciate it. I'll put the link down there in case you need it. But we do appreciate those of you, because there's some of you who regularly support us. And if it wasn't for you, I mean, we wouldn't even be able to maintain the floor. I mean, we maintained before. We've been live about 2 years now, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
And once we went live, our in-person attendance went down. But our audience expanded with all of you all over the world, literally, and you have supported us all over the world, and we appreciate that. We are working to get our own YouTube channel up. I know a lot of you are getting your videos from other YouTube channels, and that's fine. They definitely come from our platform, and that's how you're getting the information. But we think it's only fair and right that we have our own YouTube channel and put our videos out there, and as well as our website, working on a website, so that we can actually get our information to you, and we won't edit it the way other people do, because it's our content and so forth. But for now, we do appreciate those who get the content out. We just wish, since you use our content, that you'd at least send a little something over to the House of Reawakening Minds and support us, because if we go down, you go down. I mean, if we don't exist, then they can't. There's no content again. So we thank you. We thank you so much for office hours, having office hours with me and Grand Sheik, and I'm really grateful for him. You can see he's tired. Look at him; his eyes are like at half mast. But we thank you so much for being here for however long we've been on here. Thank you, Brother Laban and all. We thank you for your love and support. And those of you who cannot send our financial energy, just send us energy to keep going on, just some love and positivity. And we'll keep doing this. Next week is the fourth Friday. We actually have Brother Aaron L. at the House of Reawakening Minds. And that Sunday, fourth Sunday, we will have Father Hannibal Bay from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. on Sunday. And
he'll make sure that you get a lot of the old Lemurian knowledge.
Absolutely. We did cover, Brother Durham, about books for newly naturalized Moors. I would, there's so many different things out there. I would say there's some good websites. They definitely should go to the Moorish American Consulate.org. There's good information at RBV Publications, .com. There's the Amarian Tribe.
Yes.
The Amarian Tribe. Are they net?
Truth Walker.
Truth Walker. There are some people out there, and what we're going to try to do is put some information on our page, our Facebook page. Since this question has come up a couple of times, we will put some recommended sites and reading and books on House of Reawakening Minds Facebook page. Eventually, it will be on our website once we get it up and running. But we'll get that information out to you. Okay. Again, thank you so much.
Including the school for the children.
Moorish
Nation.
Moorish Nation. There, those of you
online school
for your children. You can up to what?
Grand Sheik.
4 or 5 children.
Yeah, with the Prime Minister Daria Bay.
Right.
With the school. Oh, you really got to listen to some of these children. They are really amazing.
Right.
And great curriculum.
Right.
So any of you, have your little children, want them properly educated, go to online school with the Moorish Nation with Grand Sheikhs Daria Bay.
Yes. And so again, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will be back probably. Well, we'll be with our class on Friday.
Oh yes.
And we'll do another office hours maybe in a couple of weeks. Somebody said we should at least do it once a month.
All right.
We can do that. We can try to do it once a month. So
as you can see, we'd be working from day to night. So we apologize for being a little restful.
Mm-hmm. But
it is what it is.
We were planning to do this all day long, and we just had to kind of
at the last minute because it's working to the last minute.
Right. So thank you again for tuning in, and share this video. Hopefully, we a lot of information. Islam
peace
was shared. That
Assalamu alaikum.
All that everything.
Shalom.